Okay, we're starting a new unit on probability and combinatorics. Combinatorics is a fancy word for counting, and counting possibilities is more complicated than it might seem at first, so we're going to get into that a little bit later. But today we're going to lay the foundation by talking about the definition of probability and practicing with probability and the different definition for odds, and do some practice with odds. Let's start by considering this question. If a raindrop falls on this set of tiles, there's a bunch of square red and blue tiles. If the raindrop is guaranteed to fall in this large square region, how many equally likely outcomes are there? Think about that for a second. Pause if you want to. There are some red tiles and there are some blue tiles. There are 25 tiles altogether, so there are 25 equally likely places for that raindrop to land. Given that there are 25 places for the raindrop to land, find the probability that it will land on a red tile. Pause and think about that for a minute. So when I say pause, you hit pause on the video and then you hit play when you think you have an answer and compare your answer to mine. Because there are 9 red tiles and 25 tiles where the raindrop can land, there's a probability of 9/25 that it will land on a red tile. The probability that it will land on a blue tile, think about that. There are 5, 10, 12, 14, 16 blue tiles out of 25 tiles where it can land. And you might say, well, why did you count them? If there's 25, couldn't you just take the 9 away from the 25 to get 16? Yes, that's an important concept actually that we'll get to in a little bit. What's the probability that the raindrop will land on a yellow tile? Pause and think about that. Since there are 0 yellow tiles, there's 0/25 chance or probability that it will land on a yellow tile. That's a probability of 0, and 0 means impossible. 0 means something and 1 means something. We'll get to that. We'll get to 1 in a minute, but just know that 0 means impossible. That makes sense. If there are no yellow tiles, there's 0 probability that it will land on a yellow tile. If 100 raindrops land on this somewhere in this region, about how many of them would you expect to fall on a red tile, and about how many of them would you expect to fall on a blue tile? Pause and think about that. Since there's a 9/25 probability of landing on a red tile, I could multiply that probability by the number of raindrops and get, if I think of that as 100 over 1, this becomes 1 in 4. 36 is what I would expect. Now, there's an important concept comparing experimental probability with theoretical probability. We'll get into that more tomorrow, in tomorrow's Nearpod lesson, but you would expect 36 to land. Chances are that it wouldn't be exactly 36, but that's the expectation based on the probability. If you thought of it this way, 9/25 equals x over 100. That's a good way of thinking of it also. The blue tile, there's a 16/25 chance multiplied by 100 raindrops. You get 64. So that if you add those together, there's our 100 raindrops. It probably wouldn't be exactly 36 and 64, but that would be the expectation. Theoretically, you would expect that to happen.